Robert J. Wright and Aaron McCarty, guests on Keel Heard via the Jack Spring Electric Keel Newsmaker Hotline. Shreveport Police Chief Ben Raymond joins us for a little bit. Chief Ben, welcome back to Keel. Thanks for taking time for us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
So, what can you tell us about the plan? What is the mindset of the chief of police? What is the mindset of the force right now? And as you sort of embark the Take Back the Neighborhood plan, tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, and so I think it's important to note that this is kind of multifaceted. It's not one specific attempt to try to reduce the violence that we've seen in recent weeks. And I'll start off by saying that this is kind of a national problem. If you look at a lot of cities nationally, we've seen increases in violent crime for the last probably 4 to 6 weeks, and so Shreveport, unfortunately, being no different than that. We have stood up a violent crimes task force within the ranks of the department, which consists of combining investigators from the detective division, those in our intelligence unit, and some from the Office of Special Investigations that routinely work firearms and narcotics offenses, and they are beginning to target those individuals that we believe are going to either be suspects of violent crime or victims of violent crime, because quite often those are the same group of people we're talking about. They're involved in that lifestyle. We also are stepping up our supplemental patrol program. We're naming it the Emergency Supplemental Patrol Program. We're going to assign officers to squads. We're about to that point now. We're working on the roster, and officers will know specific weeks of the year in which they will be subject to being basically forced to work overtime. There'll be assigned patrol shifts to make sure we've got adequate numbers throughout the city, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are also looking at recommending some changes before the Public Safety Commission and ultimately the City Council, if we get support from the Public Safety Commission, for police to stop responding to some non-criminal calls for service. The police department has historically responded any time a citizen is called, and although we would like to be able to do that, we're 80 officers down today. I've got more resignations, pending. Mm-hmm. And so we just cannot afford to continue to respond to everything. We need to focus on those efforts that are criminal in nature. Where we actually can reduce crime. And then another part of it is the multi-agency visible presence. We want to flood the streets with law enforcement, not just Shreveport Police, but Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office, Louisiana State Police, Shreveport City Marshals, FBI, DEA, ATF, all those law enforcement agencies represented in Northwest Louisiana, targeting those neighborhoods. We've seen some of these increases in violence because a lot of this violence, the violence that is not domestic related, we can influence. That violence that is tied to a criminal organization or a gang, if you will, that is the violence that we can curb and decrease and help make those neighborhoods safer. And that's what we're going to focus on.
Pardon me, you just mentioned a whole bunch of different agencies, law enforcement agencies running down that list. I would assume at this point you've had a whole lot of meetings and you've got a whole lot of thumbs up from those different leaders of those agencies that say they're willing to help, right?
Well, so I talk to the leaders of those organizations just about on a weekly basis, and they're always willing to help. We're trying to come up with some specific dates, times, shifts where you're going to see those increased presence. So you're always going to see state police in the city of Shreveport, Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office, Shreveport City Marshals, all those agencies I named, they always work within the city of Shreveport. We're talking about some concerted efforts where it'll be a noticeable increase, where you're basically putting those violent criminals on notice that we run the streets, not you. And you're going to see more of us, and you can expect that we're going to be watching your every move and being proactive in preventing that crime.
Chief, let me ask you this. This is a time when police officers are front and center. Everybody's watching everything you do. How do you balance that? I mean, how do you balance this get tough message you're giving us today with the message from others who say, we're watching everything you're doing?
And pardon me, the fact that virtually everything you do in every confrontation is probably going to be on somebody's phone video now.
It is. And I got to be honest, it's not easy. So, officers have been concerned, and again, this is a national problem, just about the perception of law enforcement, right? So we've had several national events. You've even had some local events that have citizens concerned, and then some have been quick to point the finger at law enforcement. That certainly is going to affect the job that officers do. But I think the 500 officers we have on shift understand that they took an oath, that this is their calling, and they're going to do the best they can. And look, if you're doing the right thing, I encourage you to videotape me. I can't wait to get a body camera because it's going to record every conversation I have. So if you have nothing to hide, then you have no concern about it being videotaped and audio taped and aired for others to see. I trust the process, and although there might be certain points of the process where officers get upset about things that happen, you got to trust the complete process. And I think most officers do, and they're going to do their job regardless of some of those other conversations being had.
Earlier in the morning, we talked about moving the cheese. You have a department where every week you're losing officers. Now you're telling officers they're going to work different shifts, they're going to work different hours, they may work overtime. You're moving a lot of cheese. What do you anticipate the reaction to be from your officers?
So anytime you tell an officer you're going to work overtime, that's not going to be well accepted. But I can tell you that a lot of thought has gone into this, and we have every officer, corporal, and sergeant on the department is going to be part of one of these squads. And so in reality, I don't imagine an officer will be assigned a shift that they don't volunteer to work more than 4 times a year at the most. So this is not, it's not like every week you're on call, you can expect to work a shift. These squads consist of anywhere from 25 to 50 officers for the week. And you may only have 10 or 15 shortages on patrol that week, which means, half the squad may not even work. And it'll be another 6 weeks before that squad is on call again. So although it sounds like we're going to be really affecting the lives of our employees, the reality is several days a year, they may not have a choice as to whether they work patrol. But the rest of the year, if they're working patrol, it's going to be because they're assigned to that shift because they volunteered to.
Chief, a point you have repeatedly made, and others in law enforcement have also, is the importance of community involvement. And we had discussed this earlier this morning, that one of the big problems there is in the neighborhoods that you're going into to get people to talk to the police, to give you the information you need to prosecute certain crimes and certain individuals, that you have to be able to provide those people with a modicum, at least, of protection. Is that something that's come up, and how are you going to handle that?
Yes, so certainly that's been part of the conversation. And one of our biggest problems, it's been no secret, is that we don't have individuals that know about some of this violent crime coming forward and sharing that with us. As a matter of fact, in some of these recent shootings we've had, a fairly high percentage, and I haven't run numbers, but I'm going to say 25%. Even the victims of some of this violent crime don't want to talk to the police. They'll tell us they don't know what happened, or they don't want to make a report. They don't even want to pursue charges. And I think Councilwoman Taylor spoke to that yesterday. Her and I met prior to that meeting about the concerns, and I've met with several council members that are obviously all concerned about the violence. I wish I knew the way to get everybody to the table to have these difficult conversations about police and citizen relationships, because that's the key to it. I think we all know what needs to be done. The problem is getting it done. Mm-hmm. So we have these neighborhood meetings, and I've mentioned it. You kind of get the same people that come to those meetings. COVID-19 has really affected the plans that I had for 2020. We were increasing the number of neighborhood walks. We were going to different communities on a weekly basis. We were going to have a lot of events at the recreational centers and invite the public to come out. And then COVID-19 hit, and of course we're encouraging people to stay away from one another, not to be in close proximity. And so we're following suit to set that example. That has made it difficult because over the last 4 or 5 months that we could have been building those relationships that I think we began to do last year, we've been separated from everybody else, and that's made it hard. And I think that's contributed to some of the violence you're seeing now, as people have been shut up for so long that it's starting to cause controversy.
Chief, one more thing that is controversial: criminal justice reform, where there's a move in the country and in our state to let people out of jail, to not make arrests in certain cases. Is that contributing to the higher crime rate we're seeing? Is that a concern for you, and how do you get around that?
So my personal opinion is, yes, that's contributing to higher crime. It is a concern. I don't know that there's a lot that we can do about it. COVID-19 again is to blame for a lot of that. So we've had, orders in effect in many of our jails where you don't take nonviolent criminals. And of course, the intent is we don't want the inmate population or the deputies or correction officers to all be infected with COVID-19. That could literally destroy the corrections system. So we've been very careful about who we book into jail. Well, that means that people who have committed generally nonviolent crimes have stayed out of jail. One can only reason that if a person has committed a crime, a theft, maybe even a burglary, that they will most likely, or there's a high probability that they'll commit those crimes again. So that's contributing. But I don't know, from my position as the leader of the organization, I don't have any direct influence on who stays in jail, who's released from jail. All we can do is try to effectively serve and protect the citizens of our city, regardless of who's kept in the jails and who's released.
Chief Ben Raymond, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, sir. Always a
Yes, ma'am.
pleasure. Hope to get you in studio again soon.